The leather belt hit her back 3 times before anyone even looked up. Each crack echoed across the playground in the late afternoon heat, sharp and real. 8-year-old Zaleen wore a yellow sundress, her red hair in 2 loose braids, and she did not scream. Not once. She'd learned, a long time ago, that crying only made things worse. Her stepmother, Marva, stood over her, face red, breathing heavy, that thick belt with its metal buckle raised for another swing. 32 adults in the park that day, and not a single one tried to help. Some dug into their pockets for keys, others turned to their phones, some walked their own children away, never making eye contact. But in the parking lot, 7 men watched from their motorcycles, engines still ticking from the highway ride. They wore leather vests marked with the name of their club, the Iron Shepherds. The oldest among them was Rafferty. His long salt and pepper beard blew in the wind. His deep-set brown eyes missed nothing. He hadn't spoken to his own daughter in 9 years, but that day, when Marva pulled back to strike again, he was walking across the grass before he even realized. His boots crunched dry leaves, his voice clear and steady. "Put the belt down," Rafferty said, and everyone in that moment, the mother, the men, the silent crowd, froze. Marva's eyes found his leather vest, the club's iron ram patch, the line of riders behind him. She tried to talk tough, but her words shook. "This is my daughter. Mind your business." Rafferty didn't raise his voice. He didn't get closer. He just looked at Zaleen, small and scared, holding her bare arms. Silent tears running down her cheek. He spoke again, slow and plain. "Children should be safe here, ma'am. Put it down before you do something you'll regret forever." One by one, the other bikers swung off their motorcycles, a wall of silent witnesses, all shapes and colors and ages, but all with the same steady look. Marva let the belt fall to the sand. Her lips trembled, but she stepped back. For the first time, Zaleen looked up, trying to understand if this was really happening. A man in the crowd finally fumbled out his phone to call the police. A mother nearby led her child by the hand and whispered, "It's going to be okay now." Rafferty crouched at a safe distance, matching Zaleen's eye level. "No one's going to hurt you again, not here," he told her, and meant every word. If you know every child deserves safety, tap the subscribe button now. People who stand by never change a thing. Your voice could make a difference right here. 2 police officers arrived at Riverside Park 15 minutes later, their patrol car pulling into the lot with lights flashing but no sirens. Officer Tennyson stepped out first, a woman in her early 40s with short dark hair and the kind of tired eyes that had seen too much. Her partner, Officer Brecken, followed, younger, nervous hands resting on his belt as he scanned the crowd of silent onlookers, still pretending they had somewhere else to be. Rafferty stood near Zaleen, far enough to give her space, but close enough to make sure she felt safe. The other 6 riders formed a loose circle, their bikes parked in a row behind them like iron horses at rest. None of them looked threatening. They just stood there, arms crossed, waiting. Officer Tennyson walked straight to Rafferty. "You the one who called it in?" "I am," he said, his voice even. "Woman named Marva was hitting the child with a belt. Multiple strikes. We intervened before it got worse." Tennyson's eyes moved to Zaleen, who sat on a bench now, her small hands gripping the edge of the wooden seat. The officer crouched down beside her, voice soft. "Hey, sweetheart, can you tell me what happened?" Zaleen's lips moved, but no sound came out at first. She glanced at Rafferty, then back to the officer. "Marva said I was too loud. She gets mad when I'm too loud." "Did she hit you today?" Tennyson asked gently. Zaleen nodded, eyes down. 3 times, with her belt, the one with the buckle. Tennyson's jaw tightened. She stood and turned to Brecken. "Get Child Protective Services on the line and find out where this kid's parents are." Marva had driven off 20 minutes ago, but witnesses gave her license plate number to Brecken. One older woman, guilt written all over her face, stepped forward and admitted she'd seen the whole thing. "I should have said something," she whispered. "I just didn't want to get involved." Rafferty didn't say a word, but his expression said everything. She looked away. Officer Tennyson took statements from all 7 riders. Each one told the same story, clear and simple. Marva had raised the belt. They told her to stop. She dropped it and left. No threats, no contact. Just words. Tennyson asked if any of them had recorded video, and 3 phones came out, each with a clear angle of what happened. "You did the right thing," Tennyson said to Rafferty, tucking her notepad back into her vest. "Most people just walk away." "Most people aren't worth much then," Rafferty replied, his tone flat but not unkind. Zelene's father, a man named Wynn, arrived 30 minutes later. He was in his late 30s, wearing a construction vest and work boots, his face pale with panic. He ran to Zelene and dropped to his knees, pulling her into his arms. "Baby, are you okay? What happened?" Zelene clung to him, finally crying now that her dad was there. "Marva hit me, Daddy. She hit me with the belt." Wynn's face went from fear to rage in a heartbeat. He looked up at Officer Tennyson. "Where is she?" "We're handling it, sir," Tennyson said calmly. "But I need to ask you some questions. Has this happened before?" Wynn hesitated. His silence was answer enough. "She told me she fell," he said quietly, his voice breaking. "The bruises on her arms last week. Marva said Zelene fell off the swings. I believed her." Rafferty watched the man crumble under the weight of his own guilt. He knew that feeling too well. He'd ignored signs once, too, with his own daughter. And by the time he realized what he'd missed, it was too late to fix it. Officer Tennyson gave Wynn a card for a family lawyer and another for a child psychologist. "You need to file for emergency custody," she said. "Tonight. Don't wait." Wynn nodded, tears streaming down his face, still holding Zelene like he was afraid to let go. Before Rafferty and the others left, Wynn stood and walked over. "I don't know how to thank you," he said, his voice thick. "You didn't have to do this." "Yes, we did," Rafferty said simply. "Every single one of us did." Wynn shook each of their hands one by one, and when he got to Rafferty, he held on a little longer. "She could have been killed," Wynn whispered, "if you hadn't been here." Rafferty didn't answer. He just looked over at Zelene, who was watching him from the bench, her small hand lifted in a shy wave. He waved back. "If you believe children deserve protection, no matter who steps up to give it, hit that subscribe button. Evil wins when good people stay silent. Don't stay silent." The riders mounted their bikes and rolled out of the parking lot as the sun dipped low behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the desert. Rafferty didn't look back. He never did. But this time, something felt different. This time, he didn't feel like he'd failed. 3 days later, Rafferty sat in the back corner of a diner on the edge of Tucson, nursing a cup of black coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. The place smelled like grease and old leather, the kind of spot where nobody asked questions and everyone minded their business. Across from him sat a woman named Paloma, a family lawyer who'd worked with the club before on cases no one else wanted to touch. She slid a folder across the table. "Wynn filed for emergency custody yesterday. Judge granted it. Marva's been ordered to stay at least 500 feet away from Zelene, and Child Protective Services opened a full investigation." Rafferty nodded, but didn't smile. "Good." "There's more," Paloma said, her voice dropping. "Marva's hired an attorney, a big one, Grayson Wade and Associates. They're going after you." Rafferty's hand tightened around his coffee cup. "For what? Harassment, intimidation, interfering with parental rights. They're building a case that you and your crew threatened her, that she dropped the belt out of fear, not guilt." Paloma leaned forward. "They're trying to flip the narrative, make you the bad guys." Rafferty let out a slow breath. "We've got video." "They know, but they're banking on the fact that you're Hell's Angels. That alone scares juries. They'll paint you as violent criminals who ganged up on a defenseless woman." "Defenseless," Rafferty repeated, the word bitter in his mouth. Paloma opened the folder and pulled out a printed news article. Local outlet had picked up the story. The headline read, "Biker Gang Confronts Mother in Public Park, Heroic Intervention or Vigilante Justice." Rafferty scanned the article. Half of it praised the riders. The other half questioned their motives, dug into his criminal record from 20 years ago, mentioned the club's reputation. By the end, it was clear the writer didn't know which side to take. "This is going to get ugly," Paloma said. "Marva's lawyer is good. He'll drag this out, try to discredit every one of you. You need to be ready." Rafferty looked up at her. "I've been ready my whole life." Paloma studied him for a moment, then nodded. "I'll represent you, pro bono. But I need all 7 of you to come in for depositions, and I need you to be honest with me. Is there anything in your past they can use against you?" Rafferty thought about his daughter, about the custody battle he lost, About the judge who ruled he was unfit because of the club. He thought about all the mistakes he'd made, all the times he chose the wrong thing. "Yeah," he said quietly. "There's plenty." "Then we deal with it," Paloma said. "Head on, no hiding, truth is your only defense." Rafferty finished his cold coffee and stood. "When do you need us?" "Tomorrow, 10 a.m., bring all 7. He nodded and walked out into the desert heat, his phone already in his hand, texting the crew. They'd all show up. He knew they would. That's what brotherhood meant. But as he climbed onto his bike and started the engine, Rafferty couldn't shake the feeling that this fight was about more than just Celine. It was about every kid who got hurt while people looked away. It was about every man who thought he could hide behind money and lawyers. And it was about whether or not a guy like him, with a past full of mistakes, could ever do enough good to make up for it. He didn't know the answer yet, but he was going to find out. The law office of Paloma Ibarra sat on the second floor of an old brick building in the downtown Tucson, the kind of place where the air conditioning barely worked and the coffee tasted like it had been sitting in the pot since yesterday. Rafferty and the 6 other riders filled the small conference room, their leather vests draped over the backs of metal chairs. The room smelled like stale paper and old wood. Paloma stood at the head of the table, a stack of files in front of her. She was in her mid-40s, short dark hair streaked with gray, sharp eyes that missed nothing. She'd been a public defender for 15 years before opening her own practice, and she knew how to fight dirty when she had to. "All right, let's get to it," she said, flipping open the first file. Marva's attorney filed a civil complaint yesterday. They're claiming harassment, intimidation, and emotional distress. They want damages, a restraining order against all 7 of you, and they want the video evidence suppressed. Rafferty leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "On what grounds?" "They're arguing you recorded her without consent in a public space where she had a reasonable expectation of privacy. It's a stretch, but they're hoping a judge bites." One of the riders, a man named Boone with a thick beard and a scar across his forearm, shook his head. "She was in a public park, beating a kid. There's no privacy in that." "I know," Paloma said, "but they're going to argue she was disciplining her child, which is protected under parental rights, and that you inserted yourselves into a private family matter." "Private family matter," Rafferty repeated, his voice low and dangerous. "That's what they're calling it." Paloma nodded. "That's exactly what they're calling it. And they're going to dig into every one of you. Criminal records, employment history, club affiliations. They'll paint you as a gang that terrorized a woman trying to parent her child." Another rider, a younger man named Quillen, with tattoos running up both arms, spoke up. "So what do we do?" "We tell the truth," Paloma said simply. "All of it. We don't hide. We don't deflect. We put everything on the table before they can twist it." She turned to Rafferty. "You've got a record. Assault 20 years ago. They'll bring it up." "I know," Rafferty said. "And they'll bring up the club. They'll say you're part of a criminal organization." "We're not criminals," Boone said, his voice hard. "We're a motorcycle club. We do charity rides. We raise money for veterans. We help families in need." "I know that," Paloma said, "but the public doesn't always know that. And Marva's attorney is going to use every stereotype he can to make you look like the bad guys." Rafferty leaned forward, his elbows on the table. "So, we let them dig. We let them find whatever they want. And then, we show the judge the video. We show him what she did. And we let him decide who the real bad guy is." Paloma studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, but you need to be prepared. This is going to get messy. They're going to ask you about your daughter." Rafferty's jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. "Let them ask." The deposition started 2 days later. One by one, the riders sat in a small room with Marva's attorney, a man named Warren Grayson, who wore a suit that probably cost more than most people made in a month. He was in his 50s, silver hair slicked back, a smile that never reached his eyes. Rafferty went last. He sat across from Grayson, Paloma beside him, a court reporter in the corner typing every word. Grayson opened with the easy questions: name, age, occupation. Then he moved in. "Mr. Voss, you're a member of the Iron Shepherd's Motorcycle Club, correct?" "That's right." "And this club, it's affiliated with the Hells Angels, is it not?" "We're an independent chapter. We ride with them sometimes. But we're our own group." "And you're aware of the Hells Angels' reputation, are you not?" The criminal activity, the violence. Paloma cut in. Objection, relevance. Grayson smiled. I'm establishing context, counselor. You're making assumptions, Paloma shot back. Grayson ignored her and turned back to Rafferty. Mr. Voss, you have a criminal record. Assault, correct? Yes. Tell me about that. Rafferty took a slow breath. I got into a bar fight 20 years ago. Guy came at me with a bottle. I defended myself. Judge didn't see it that way. I did 6 months. And you've been a member of this motorcycle club ever since? I joined the club after I got out. Yeah. Grayson leaned forward. So, you have a history of violence, and you belong to a group known for violence. And on the day in question, you and 6 other members of this group confronted my client in a public park. Is that correct? We didn't confront her, Rafferty said, his voice steady. We stopped her from hitting a child. According to you. According to 32 witnesses and 3 videos. Grayson's smile didn't falter. Mr. Voss, do you have children? Rafferty's hands tightened on the arms of his chair. I have a daughter. And where is she now? Paloma's hand went to Rafferty's arm, a silent warning. That's not relevant. It's very relevant, Grayson said smoothly. I'm trying to understand Mr. Voss's motivations, why he would insert himself into a situation involving a child he didn't know. Rafferty's voice was cold. Because no one else did. Or because you saw an opportunity to play the hero. To make up for past failures. Rafferty didn't flinch. Think whatever you want. I saw a kid getting hurt and I stopped it. That's all there is. Grayson stared at him for a long moment, then closed his folder. We'll see what the judge thinks. After the deposition, Rafferty sat in his truck in the parking lot, hands on the steering wheel, staring at nothing. Paloma knocked on the window and he rolled it down. You did good in there, she said. Didn't feel good. It never does, she said. But you told the truth. That's all we can do. Rafferty nodded, but he didn't start the engine. You think we'll win? Paloma hesitated. I think we got a strong case, but it's going to depend on the judge and on how much the video speaks for itself. Rafferty finally started the truck. Then it better speak loud. If you've ever been judged for doing the right thing, drop a comment that says truth matters. Because sometimes the hardest battles are fought by the people no one expects to be heroes. And if you're still here, hit that subscribe button. This story isn't over yet. 3 weeks after the depositions, the story hit the local news. A reporter named Ainsley from Channel 9 ran a segment titled Biker Intervention, Heroes or Vigilantes. The segment showed clips of the park, interviewed witnesses, and displayed parts of the video. They blurred Zelene's face, but everything else was clear. Rafferty watched it from his apartment, a small one-bedroom place on the south side of town, with peeling paint and a window that didn't close all the way. The segment was 6 minutes long. Half of it praised the riders for stepping in. The other half questioned their motives, brought up Rafferty's record, mentioned the club's ties to Hell's Angels. By the time it ended, Rafferty's phone was buzzing nonstop. Messages from people he hadn't spoken to in years. Some supportive, some angry. One message stood out. It was from a number he didn't recognize. Dad, it's me, Faye. I saw the news. We need to talk. Rafferty stared at the message for a full minute before his hands started shaking. He hadn't heard from his daughter in 9 years. 9 years of silence. 9 years of wondering if she'd ever forgive him for all the ways he'd failed her. He typed back, slow and careful. I'd like that. Her reply came fast. I'm in Phoenix for work. Can you meet me tomorrow? There's a coffee shop on Van Buren. 2 o'clock. Rafferty's chest tightened. I'll be there. The next day he rode to Phoenix on his bike, the desert highway stretching out in front of him like a ribbon of heat and dust. He arrived early, parked outside the coffee shop, and sat on a bench under a scraggly tree, trying to calm his nerves. Faye arrived at 2 on the dot. She was 26 now, tall and lean, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked like her mother, but she had his eyes. She saw him and stopped, her expression unreadable. Rafferty stood. Hey, she said, her voice quiet. They went inside, ordered coffee, and sat at a table in the back corner. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Faye broke the silence. I saw the news story. Mom sent it to me. Rafferty nodded. I figured she would. She thought I'd be embarrassed. She thought I'd be angry. Are you? Faye looked down at her cup. I was, for a long time. But then I watched the video. I saw that little girl's face, and I saw you step in when no one else would. She paused. I work with kids now, foster care, kids who've been abused, neglected. I see that look on their faces every day, the look that says they've given up on adults helping. Rafferty's throat tightened. And I realized something, Faye continued. You weren't there for me when I needed you, but you were there for her, and maybe that matters. Rafferty's voice came out rough. I'm sorry for everything, for choosing the club over you, for not being the dad you deserved. Faye's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. I needed to hear that. They sat there for a long time, talking in bits and pieces. Faye told him about her work, about the kids she tried to help, about how hard it was to see so much pain. Rafferty told her about the park, about Zelene, about the fight ahead with Marva's lawyers. Before they left, Faye reached across the table and took his hand. I'm not saying everything's fixed, but maybe we can start over. Rafferty squeezed her hand, unable to speak. I'll be at the hearing, Faye said. When it happens, I want to be there. Rafferty nodded, his eyes burning. Thank you. As he rode back to Tucson that evening, the sun setting behind him, Rafferty felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. 4 months after the park, the hearing finally came. It was held in a small courtroom on the 3rd floor of the Pima County Courthouse. A room with wood paneling that had turned dark with age and windows that looked out over downtown Tucson. The air inside smelled like old paper and floor polish. Rafferty sat in the front row with the other 6 riders, all of them wearing clean jeans and button-up shirts instead of their vests. Paloma had told them to dress respectfully, to show the judge they took this seriously. Behind them sat Wynn, Zelene's father, his face tight with worry. And in the row behind him, Faye sat quietly, hands folded in her lap. Rafferty had looked back once when they arrived, caught her eye, and she'd nodded. That small gesture steadied him more than anything else could have. Judge Lorraine Hightower entered the courtroom, a woman in her early 60s with steel-gray hair and reading glasses perched on her nose. She'd been on the bench for 20 years, and her reputation was that she didn't waste time and didn't tolerate games. All rise, the bailiff said, and everyone stood. Judge Hightower sat, adjusted her glasses, and opened the file in front of her. This is the matter of Marva Castell versus Rafferty Voss and 6 others. Counsel, are we ready to proceed? Paloma stood. Yes, Your Honor. Warren Grayson, Marva's attorney, stood as well. We are, Your Honor. Judge Hightower nodded. Let's get to it then. Mr. Grayson, you may present your case. Grayson stood and walked to the center of the room, his expensive suit perfectly tailored, his voice smooth and confident. Your Honor, this case is about a group of men who took it upon themselves to interfere in a private family matter. My client, Marva Castell, was disciplining her stepdaughter in a public park when 7 members of a motorcycle club surrounded her, intimidated her, and forced her to drop the implement she was using. This was not a rescue. This was harassment. He went on for another 10 minutes, painting Rafferty and the others as violent criminals who preyed on a defenseless woman. He brought up Rafferty's assault charge, mentioned the club's reputation, suggested they were looking for attention or trying to play hero. When he finished, Judge Hightower turned to Paloma. Ms. Ibarra, your response. Paloma stood, and her voice was calm but sharp. Your Honor, Mr. Grayson wants you to believe this case is about overreach. But what it's really about is a woman who struck a child 3 times with a leather belt in front of 32 witnesses, and 7 men who stopped her before she could do it again. She walked to the evidence table and picked up a tablet. We have video evidence from 3 separate angles, all showing the same thing. Ms. Castell hitting the child not making a sound because she'd learned that crying made it worse, and my clients intervening with words, not violence. Paloma played the first video. The courtroom went silent. The sound of the belt hitting Zelene's back echoed through the speakers, sharp and brutal. Judge Hightower's expression didn't change, but her eyes hardened. When the video ended, Paloma continued. Ms. Castell claims this was discipline, but Child Protective Services investigated and found evidence of ongoing abuse, bruises, fear. A pattern of behavior designed to control and terrorize an 8-year-old child. She turned to face Grayson. Mr. Grayson says my clients are criminals, but let me tell you who they really are. Boone is a Marine veteran who served 2 tours overseas. Quillen runs a community garage that offers free repairs to low-income families. Laszlo volunteers at the VA hospital. These men are not criminals. They're citizens who did what 32 other people were too afraid to do. Judge Hightower held up a hand. Ms. Ibarra, I've seen the videos. I've read the CPS report. Let me ask you this. Why didn't your client simply call the police and wait? Paloma didn't hesitate. Because the belt was already raised, Your Honor. Because in the time it would have taken police to arrive, that child could have been hit again, maybe worse. They made a judgment call, and it was the right one. Judge Hightower turned to Grayson. Mr. Grayson, do you have witnesses? We do, Your Honor. My client is prepared to testify. Call her then. Marva took the stand, her hands folded in her lap, her expression perfectly composed. She wore a tailored dress and minimal jewelry, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. She looked like someone who had never raised her voice, let alone a belt. Grayson asked her to describe what happened that day, and Marva's voice was soft, almost apologetic. Zelene had been acting out all morning, screaming, running wild. I'd asked her repeatedly to calm down, but she wouldn't listen. When we got to the park, she started making a scene again, and I felt I had no choice but to discipline her. And how did you discipline her? Grayson asked. I used a belt, just a few swats to get her attention. And then, what happened? Marva's eyes filled with tears. These men surrounded me, 7 of them, big, intimidating men in leather vests. I was terrified. I thought they were going to hurt me. Paloma stood. Objection. The videos show no one touched Ms. Castell or made any threatening gestures. Judge Hightower nodded. Sustained. Ms. Castell, stick to the facts. Marva wiped her eyes. They told me to drop the belt. I was scared, so I did. Then they stood there, staring at me, until I got in my car and left. I've never been so humiliated in my life. When it was Paloma's turn to cross-examine, she didn't waste time. Ms. Castell, how many times did you hit Zelene that day? Marva hesitated. I don't remember exactly. 2 or 3 times. The video shows 3 distinct strikes, and you didn't stop until my client intervened. Is that correct? I was about to stop. Were you? Paloma pulled up the video again, paused it at the moment before Rafferty spoke. This frame shows the belt raised for a 4th strike. You weren't stopping. You were getting ready to hit her again. Marva's composure cracked, just for a second. She needed to learn. Learn what, Ms. Castell? That adults are allowed to hurt her whenever they're frustrated? Objection, Grayson said. Argumentative. Withdrawn, Paloma said. Ms. Castell, CPS found bruises on Zalene's arms that were weeks old. Did you cause those? She falls a lot. Did you lock her in her room for an entire day because she spilled juice on your laptop? Marva's eyes flashed. That's a lie. Zelene told investigators that you did. Are you calling an 8-year-old a liar? She's been coached by her father. Paloma leaned forward. Or maybe she's finally been given a safe space to tell the truth. Judge Hightower tapped her gavel. That's enough. Ms. Ibarra, anything else? No, Your Honor. Rafferty was called to the stand next. He walked up, sat down, and met the judge's eyes without flinching. Paloma kept her questions simple. Mr. Voss, why did you intervene that day? Because I saw a woman about to hit a child with a belt, and no one else was doing anything about it. Did you threaten Ms. Castell in any way? No, I told her to put the belt down. That's it. Why didn't you just call the police? Rafferty paused, choosing his words carefully. Because she was about to hit that kid again. I couldn't stand there and watch that happen. Do you regret intervening? No, ma'am, I don't. Grayson's cross-examination was aggressive. He brought up Rafferty's assault charge, suggested he had a history of violence, implied he was looking for a reason to confront someone. Rafferty stayed calm through all of it. When Grayson finished, Rafferty looked at the judge and said, I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes. But that day in the park, I did the right thing, and I'd do it again. Judge Hightower called a recess. When they came back an hour later, her decision was written on her face. I've reviewed all the evidence, she said, the videos, the witness statements, the CPS report, and I'm going to be blunt. Ms. Castell, what you did that day was not discipline. It was abuse. And the fact that you don't see the difference is deeply concerning. She turned to Rafferty and the others. As for you 7, you did what any decent person should do. You stopped a child from being hurt. The law allows for intervention in cases of imminent harm, and that's exactly what this was. She looked back at Grayson. The complaint is dismissed, and Ms. Castell, if you ever come before me again on charges involving a child, you will not like the outcome. The gavel came down, and it was over. Outside the courthouse, Wynn shook each of their hands, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you," he said, over and over. "Thank you." Zaline was with him, holding his hand. She looked up at Rafferty and smiled, then reached into her backpack and pulled out a drawing. It showed a man on a motorcycle with a halo over his head. "I made this for you," she said softly. Rafferty crouched down and took the drawing, his throat tight. "Thank you, sweetheart. I'm going to put this somewhere special." As they walked to their bikes, Faye caught up with Rafferty. "I'm proud of you, Dad." Rafferty stopped, looked at her, and for the first time in 9 years, he felt like maybe he'd done something right. If you believe standing up for what's right is worth the fight, drop a comment that says, "Justice won." And if this story moved you, hit that subscribe button, because stories like this matter. They remind us that good people still exist. 6 months later, the Iron Shepherds held their annual charity ride for at-risk youth, a tradition they'd started years ago to raise money for foster care programs and support services. The ride started at dawn, a long line of motorcycles rolling through the desert as the sun came up over the mountains. Rafferty rode at the front, the wind in his face, the engine humming beneath him. Behind him rode Boone, Quillen, Laszlo, Dex, Ridley, and Merrick. And for the first time in 9 years, Faye rode with them, sitting on the back of her dad's bike, her arms wrapped around his waist. They rode to a community center on the south side of Tucson, where families gathered for a day of food, games, and support services. Rafferty saw Wynn and Zaline standing near the entrance, waving. Zaline ran over when she saw him, her red braids bouncing. "You came," she said, her face bright with joy. "Wouldn't miss it," Rafferty said. The day was good, simple. Families ate together, kids played on the lawn, and the riders spent the afternoon talking to parents who needed help navigating the foster system or finding resources for their children. As the sun began to set, Rafferty stood on the edge of the parking lot, watching the scene. Faye walked up beside him. "You did good, Dad," she said quietly. "We all did," Rafferty replied. Faye looked at him. "I've been thinking about what you said that day at the coffee shop, about not being able to undo the past." Rafferty nodded. "You can't," Faye continued, "but you can build something better going forward, and I think you're doing that." Rafferty's eyes stung, but he didn't look away. "Thank you." They stood there together, father and daughter, watching the sun drop behind the mountains, the desert glowing gold and red. Rafferty thought about Zaline, about the park, about the belt hitting her back and the choice he'd made to step in. He thought about the hearing, about the judge's words, about Faye sitting in the courtroom, watching him fight for something that mattered. And he realized something. Redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about showing up in the present. It was about making the right choice when no one else would. It was about refusing to look away. He'd spent years thinking he was too broken to be worth anything. But maybe broken people could still do good things. Maybe broken people could still protect the ones who needed it most. As the last light faded and the stars began to appear, Rafferty felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Thank you for staying with this story all the way to the end. If it reminded you that good people still exist, that standing up matters, that broken doesn't mean useless, share it. Tell someone about it. And if you believe the world needs more people who refuse to look away, hit that subscribe button, because stories like this are the ones that change hearts. And maybe, just maybe, they change the world too. Thank you.